Alright, today we're going to do 4.4 factoring part 2. And this is going to be involving grouping and type 1 where the coefficient is 1. And I really like teaching this section of factoring. I like all of factoring, but I think this is really fun. Once you learn the rules, then it goes very, very fast and you become very efficient with it. Just takes a little bit of practice and memorizing the rules of the signs. Alright, so let's get going. Alright, so when we're factoring by grouping, this is mainly used when you have 4 terms. Okay, you wouldn't want to do it if you have just a plain old trinomial or a binomial. You'll use it when you have 4 terms or more. Alright, so you're going to group the first 2 terms and then the last 2 terms. Okay, group the first 2 terms together, then the last 2 terms together. You're going to factor out the GCF from the first group, and then you're going to factor out the GCF from the second group. You're going to write the repeated factor in one group and then put together the leftovers as your second factor. And let me show you what I mean. You're given the polynomial 4x squared plus 12x plus 5x plus 15. You're going to want to group the first 2 and then group the last 2. Okay, so that's exactly what we've done here. Right, so you have 4x squared plus 12x in one group and then the other 2 in the other. Now, sometimes you may have to rearrange these so that they can factor out something. Most of the time they'll come straight forward and you won't have any need to rearrange it. But this one's straightforward. Alright, so looking at 4x squared and 12x, what is my GCF between these 2 terms? Well, you know I've got an x in both those terms, so the smallest x is x to the first power, so that's what I can take out. And then also between the 2 numbers 4 and 12, 4 is the common factor, so I'm going to take that out. Make sure you take the biggest number that you can take out. You can't take out any more than 4 because that's your smallest number. Alright, so I'm going to take out 4x, which leaves me, when I divide, 4x squared divided by 4x leaves me with x. And then 12x divided by 4x leaves me with 3. Okay, so if you want to see if that works and multiply it back to see if you did it right, you can. Then go to this term, this grouping, and I'm going to notice that the only thing I have in between these 2 terms is a 5 that I can take out. So I take a 5 out, and then I'm left with 5x divided by 5, which is x, 15 divided by 5, which is 3. And you'll notice that I have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3 in common. If you do this correctly, that's exactly what will happen. You'll have 2 that are exactly the same. Right, so when you do have that, that's a GCF of the whole thing. So I'm going to take that GCF and put it in the front. You don't have to put it in the front, but I just like to do it. And then you take your leftovers, which is 4x plus 5, and you put that in a factor together. And that is your factored form of the polynomial up here. So you'll notice if you want to go back and distribute it through to see if it works, you can check your work and do that. Note, the goal of grouping is to have a common factor. So if you don't have one, if this doesn't happen where you have them exactly the same, go back and check your work. It may be that you just need to take out, instead of a positive, you may need to take a negative out to make it work. So go back and check your work. Alright, so that's grouping. Alright, now, my favorite one, factoring type 1 trinomials, where the coefficient is 1. What does that coefficient mean? Well, that means that the quadratic term, that x squared term, has a 1 and no more than a 1 in front of it. Okay? So, you always want a GCF first, no matter what the situation, no matter what kind of thing, you always look for that first. Should be number 1 rule. Then you check to make sure the coefficient of the quadratic term is a 1 and nothing more. Find the factors of c, which is the constant term, that will add or subtract to give you b, which is the linear term. Okay. All right, remember it is ax squared plus bx plus c. That's our quadratic standard form. So you want to find factors of c that add or subtract, depending on what the sign says, to be b. All right, then you're going to form two binomials. Binomials means has two terms with those factors. Now, the main thing that I want to stress here is the rules of the signs. If you know the rules of the signs, this will help you in every type of factoring situation, no matter what it is. If you can remember this, it will save you a lot of problems down the road. And it's not hard. The rules are, if there's a positive constant term, the one in the back end, so in other words, right here on the back end of this, if this is positive, okay, that means the signs are going to be the same. They're either going to be plus plus or minus minus. You look at the linear term, and to see which one it's going to be. In this case, if it was a plus right here, that means that both signs are going to be positive. If it was a minus right there, both signs would be negative, okay? So you look at the back end to see whether it's going to be same sign, and then you look right here to see which sign it is, if it's positive back here. Now, if there's a negative constant term, so a negative back here, all right? So that means that the signs are going to be different. There's no other way to get a negative except for multiplying a positive and negative number. So you have to have a positive and negative sign in your answer. Then, to tell which one gets which, you find your two factors, and the largest of the two factors will get the sign that's in front of the linear term. Okay? Once you determine those factors, the largest factor gets the sign, the same sign of the linear term, which is the middle term. So you need to know those words, which one's linear, which one's quadratic, which one's the constant, so you'll know which ones we're talking about. Okay, because I'm not going to be saying middle, front, back. You need to know those words. All right, so let's try some of these. Your first one is x squared plus 14x plus 40. All right, you look at the back end first. You kind of work these backwards. Look at the back end, and it's a positive. Positive sign back here means same sign. That means they're either going to be plus plus or minus minus. Then you look at the linear term right here, and that tells us they're both going to be plus, which makes sense. There's no negatives in this problem at all. They both have to be plus. So the setup would be, you can go ahead and set it up just like this and put you a plus and a plus. And now your signs are all set up. All right? Then you say to yourself, what multiplies to give you 40 but adds to give you 14? You don't have to worry about signs. You just say what it does. Multiplies to give you 40 that adds to be 14. Okay? Factors of 40 are lots of them. 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10. 4 and 10 add to be 14. So you can put 4 and a 10. Doesn't matter which way they go because the same signs. And then you split up your first quadratic term, x and x. All right, now if I had x to the 4, I would say x squared right here and x squared right here. You just split up your variables, okay, on the front and the back ends. The middle you won't have to worry about because that'll all be taken care of when you, if you had to FOIL it or distribute it back out. Okay, so don't worry about the middle stuff, just worry about the letters on the back and the front. So, when you FOIL this or distribute it back out, you will get x squared plus 14x plus 40. Okay, so same signs, both positive, because this told us same sign, both positive. Okay, and these are your factors. This is completely factored. All right, next problem. All right, example number 2 says x squared minus 6x plus 9. All right, we start with our signs. Back here, it's a plus. That means they're the same sign. So I'm going to draw my little parentheses. All right, now, what are they? Are they going to be plus, plus, or minus, minus? Well, you look right here in front of the linear term. It's a minus, so that means they're both negative. Split up your x. We're almost done. We haven't even done anything yet. Look, we're almost done. Now you think to yourself, what multiplies to give you 9, but adds to be 6? Multiplies to give you 9, but adds to be 6. Well, 1 and 9, they add to be 10. That doesn't work. 3 and 3, that adds to be 6, so it must be 3 and 3. All right, so if you want to distribute that back, you will get x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now, another way you'll see that if they're exactly the same, you'll see them written like this a lot. Quantity squared, okay? Which means that this is multiplied to itself twice, okay? All right, again, learning the rules of the signs and reading it correctly will make your life really, really easy on this section. You should do really well. All right, example 3, x squared minus 3x minus 10. Look and see what we need. Okay, you know you're going to have parentheses. All right, so we look on the back and it's a negative. That means my signs are going to be different. Okay, then this is going to be the sign of my biggest factor when I find out what they are. So you will then say differently now, factors of 10 that subtract, because it's a subtraction back here, subtract to be 3. What multiplies to give you 10 but subtracts to be 3? Well, 1 and 10 doesn't subtract to be 3. Let's see, 5 and 2. 5 and 2 subtracts to be 3. All right, 5 and 2. Okay, which number is bigger, 5 or 2? 5. That gets the sign that's in front of this linear term. So the 5 has to go here, and the 2 goes back here, and you split it up. Now, it doesn't matter if you put the plus 2 up here and the minus 5. It does not matter because multiplication is commutative, which means you can do it in any order. What does matter is making sure you have the signs with the right number, okay? All right, so let's try another one. This one says x squared plus 7x minus 18. Again, I'm going to go ahead, and because it is a type 1 with a coefficient of 1, I can go ahead and do this. Okay, I'm going to split up my x's. Now I'm going to look. Back here it's a minus. That means different signs. I'm going to put a plus and a minus, doesn't matter. You can put a minus plus, doesn't matter. All right, so then you say to yourself, factors of 18 that subtract to be 7. All right, factors of 18 are 1 and 18. That doesn't subtract to be 7. 2 and 9. 2 and 9 subtract to be 7. So then you look, and the biggest number between 2 and 9 is 9. 9 gets the plus. So 9 goes here, and then 2. And then if you want to check it by distributing back, you will get this trinomial. Okay? All right. And that's it for this section. Very, very simple. I'm going to give you lots of practice on these. Just remember, it's the signs that make the biggest difference. Okay? So if you remember those rules, this will be a super easy section for you. And I will see you in class.